What's up, everybody? It's your boy Kendall, and it's day 45 of 100 days of codes. And so we know what that means. We know that means rule number one, that we code 1 hour a day. Two, we keep ourselves accountable publicly to all of you fine people on LinkedIn and Twitter. And number three, we share our thoughts and our feels with all of you. So that's a little bit about what we get up to every day, and it's day 45. Woo wee, it's pretty crazy. And today we were looking at that fine library. That fine library, not a framework, library. And this is called React. React, we are loving at the moment. So much fun. We had fun. Today we were looking at, essentially looking at hooks, looking at user states, things like that, and what they mean, what they do. So we learned that using a state is a way of giving your app, or sort of the thing you're creating. So you're, for example, using my create app, the npx, and you're installing that from the lovely people at React. You're getting this sort of boilerplates, and then you're creating inside of this app.js this sort of parent folder, or this parent file, or this main fold that everything's, it's the parent of all of the children. You're using a state in that, or a few states, of giving a way of giving your app memory and managing anything you want to control or track, or anything like that. So you've got all these like little components that you've created. So in your project, you might have, for example, many components. You might have a nav bar. You might have a menu. You might have whatever it is. You might have tweets, whatever it is. And there's sort of the, what you might think of as sort of the components, the dumb components, the things that don't know what to do. And sort of in that sort of app.js, or that main part, you can actually sort of tell them what to do. It's sort of a smart way, and it controls the state of the others. It's pretty cool. So it's like the brain. So the state is like the brain of the various different things that are going on, and it's a memory of how many clicks, for example. And the behavior would be sort of the functionality to track and sort of update the states with each click if you had a button, for example. And we looked at sort of its there's a hook. And so we talked about these sort of hooks and these user states, and they were first released in October 2018. We saw that they're built with their built-in functionality in React, and that they bring power to functional components. We learned that they start with things like these hooks. They start with things like use state, or use effect, or a use reducer, etc. And you can actually write your own custom hooks, which we haven't gone into yet today. But you aren't limited by that. And in each of the, you actually, in the file, in the sort of, for example, the app.js, or the file you need that state in, you'll import that use state in. You import from the use state from React at the top of your file, just like you would import in anything else. So you would say imports, and then use state, and then from React. And then you might, in the function, for example, you might do something like const, and then you might do like square brackets, and then you might do states, and that's sort of the name, and then comma, and then set state. And that'll be the function you'll eventually use to change the state of your state. And then you'll have equals, and they'll say use state, and then you'll put what the initial state is. What's the starting value? So it might be, for example, the value of 0. If it's a color, it might be black. Just depends what it is that you want the initial state to be. We looked at an illustration of a light bulb. Now you might have sort of const, and then it might say is lit is the name, and then the function is set is lit, and then equals might be a use state, and then it might be false. So the light bulb will be off, and then you could toggle it, and you can change it, and those sorts of things within that. So we learned about that sort of thing. We learned about sort of creating these components and breaking them down and making them a bit easier. It was a lot of fun. We looked at things, for example, the app being the brain, and then the little components, like maybe you have a display component, a plus button, a minus button. things like that. We talked about sort of lifting states, and we heard from the great big K.C. Dodds, who said finding the lowest common parent shared between the two or more components and placing state management there, and then passing the state and a mechanism for updating the state down into the components that need it. That's his official sort of definition of what's going on there. So it's super interesting. You can't pass things up from the children elements, but you can pass things down from the parents. So it's really, really interesting. Props are the only way to send the state and functionality down to the components. And these props are the only way the component can update the state higher up. So props are the way you do that, the way you update things and you change things and that sort of thing. So that was really interesting to learn more about. We also had the gentleman from Adaptive come and speak to us today as well. So we learned a bit about that sort of stuff. We also learned, we had this talk from Adaptive, and they were talking about how they use React in their projects and sort of how they use Next.js in sort of connection with that. How they connect sort of things like PHP, so WordPress, and they use like a headless sort of way where they don't use the packaged WordPress thing, but what they'll do is they use maybe the backend so they can sort of manage it in PHP and WordPress, but then they'll use this headless thing where it doesn't use the head of PHP, but instead you connect it with something else, and they have converters that they use to then use React on the front ends and connect the two, which was really, really interesting. That really fascinated me. I love the fact that you can use that because that's what people are used to. They might be using PHP to sort of manage their data, and that's what they want. But then on the front end, then you could connect it up and grab that data from the PHP or WordPress section, and then fetch that data into, like as an API, into React. That was fascinating to me. I can't wait to figure out how to do that and make that happen, because I know that'll be very beneficial to a lot of people who want that sort of thing. But yeah, that was very interesting to hear from Adaptive. The two gentlemen, they were awesome. Speaking about it, one was sort of the founder and one was sort of somebody who'd been with them for a year. And they spoke about sort of the different things that they use, the way they go about the journey, the way that they create things, the way they bring on junior developers, and sort of they don't throw them in the deep end, but they sort of figure it out. They talked about sort of learning new technologies and how they go about it. And it's sort of trial and error. And they spoke about the fact how, like, they don't have all the answers and sometimes they forget, and they help each other improve their code. And it was just super interesting to hear the culture and how it works. And obviously there's some people who are better at some things, or some are better at the back end, some are better at the front ends. There's just interesting how they sort of set people tasks on these sprints. And at Adaptive, they were talking about how they have these sprints where they might have a sprint of 2 weeks, or maybe it's they work on something for those 2 weeks. And how they manage things was fascinating to hear about the culture, and super exciting, to be quite honest. I can't wait to be a part of something like that, like Adaptive or like one of these companies we've looked at. It was just super interesting. So that was some of the things. So we started with squats today on the boot camp because I do School of Codes. We did two. We did a little bit of this talk. We did some code wars with my partner as well, which is super cool. Working through a 7 KYU and 6 KYU, which is really cool. Talked about sort of hooks. We talked about use states. And then we started interacting things with sort of putting things into components and breaking them up into different folders, and then bringing those functions into the display, or into the return, into the children. So then we see those things and we change things up. So we were exporting and importing all the different parts as well. So getting a lot of practice today. How did I think and feel about everything today? Well, so far, I'm loving React. There were a few times where it got a little bit stuck or sort of lost my way, but that's natural. I mean, we're only 3 days into React, so I mean, come on. 3 days in and we're already doing pretty good. So yeah, having a lot of fun, finding it challenging at times, but I do love a good challenge. I love cracking the case. Feel a bit like a detective sometimes, me and my partner. But we Google it a few times. We go on Stack Overflow. We go into and we figure it out. We figure it out. We break the problem down, and we've been able to solve it. So, anyways, whatever the case, it's day 45. Peace out to all you guys today. Enjoy the sunshine. Enjoy a beer. Enjoy some coffee. Enjoy your nights. Watch some Obi-Wan Kenobi because it's on again. Check out some Stranger Things. Whatever you get up to, have a nap. Have fun with your cat. Have fun with your dog. Have fun with your kids. Whatever it is you get up to tonight, have an awesome night. Day 45, signing out. Peace out.